we dive into a bit of this lawfare, we're not going to be able to look at all 158 scenarios. But so we talked about the stick here, but what about the carrot? What was the carrot?
So the lawfare had started almost 3 years ago now. We were at the Paris satellite show, which is one of the two main events of the space industry that happen, of the satellite industry that happen globally. There's one in Washington, which happens in the early part of the year, and then there's one that happens in Paris, which generally happens in September. And we, Rivada, were there. We had a display, we had our stand, podium, all the stuff that you have, speaking. And I was actually at our stand, and I got approached by a gentleman who was quite senior on the Chinese side of things. And he'd come from China, and he said, "Mr. Ganley, I've come here just to see you, just to meet you." And it was a Monday morning. And I said to him, "Well, that's very nice, but I have a very full schedule this week." And he said, "I will stay in Paris until I can meet you." I said, "Fine." So I decided that I would meet him on the Thursday, and I met him at the Place Vendôme, and we had a walk around. And during that walk around, he told me how, of course, justified their actions and why it was necessary that they took all of these legal actions, but that it was nothing personal and nothing against me, and that they think that I'm a great inventor and a wonderful person, and that they really wanted to be my partner, blowing smoke at me, and buttering me up, basically. And they said that they had $7.5 billion for the project. And not only did they say that, but at the satellite show itself, they leafleted the show, and even had those flyers put on each table at the venue of the hotel where the show was held. It was the Westin Hotel in Paris, and saying that the funding of the $7+ billion was there, and this project was going to be going ahead by them. And he said,
wait, which project?
The Alternet that they were going to do. They didn't call it the Alternet. Exactly.
What were you thinking of these leaflets? I mean,
well, it was a topic of conversation, because they were claiming at this time, that this was their project, and that because they had attempted a hostile takeover of a German company that had developed some of the technology around this, and they failed in that hostile takeover attempt, and the German government ruled against them and found against them in a saying that a Chinese company cannot take over this entity. But they were saying that they were doing this project themselves anyway. But this gentleman in our stroll around the Place Vendôme said that they would give me 50% of the equity, and they would fully fund my 50%. So out of the
$3.5 billion.
Well, not quite, but okay. Almost.
Yeah.
A lot. $3+ billion. Now, did I believe that? No. I mean, however, he was pressing upon me that this is what they would do. He asked if he could have a follow-up meeting. I had a follow-up meeting. And in the follow-up meeting, it was made clear, you take the money, you go in partnership with us, we launch this thing from China, we manufacture the satellites in China, we will be your partner, and we will be a much better partner for you than anybody else in the world could possibly be. And he said, we will deliver China, Asia, Latin America, and Europe. He said, we will deliver those markets, and he said, we won't be able to deliver at North America at the beginning, but he said we will immediately be able to deliver all of those other markets as addressable markets for this project. We will be your partner. You will have the capital, you will have the equity, you will have the equipment. We will get this thing done. You will use your team to work with us in China. You can keep some of the operations in Germany. And he didn't say it as bluntly as this, but that if you don't do this, your life will be miserable. The lawfare will increase, and we are going to make sure that this project will not happen.
I mean, they were ready to give you everything.
That's what he said.
You would, I mean, for the price of your soul, perhaps.
Well, that's how I see it. Yeah, there were people that said, well, look, just do it. I mean, this is no one's going to care. No one's going to even know. Everybody else does it. And, there are entrepreneurs who've got massive interests in China, and it's never harmed them. It's never, far from it, it's propelled them. Why would it be any different in your case? And for me, I had taken a conscious decision many, many years ago to never do business in communist China. And the reason for that is I started off as a 19-year-old going to the Soviet Union to seek to do business there. And I saw that Ronald Reagan was right, that it was the evil empire. And I had Russians tell me that Ronald Reagan was right, that it was the evil empire. And the source of that evil was Marxism and was communism, where to be at the top of those organizations, you had to sell your soul. It wasn't an option to not do it. You had to do it. And I know what it is to deal with communists. I know, and people say, well, they're not really communists. Well, yeah. Maybe they're not really communists, but they are individuals who have sold out to be able to harness the power of that communist party, which only can exist by means of oppression, and the oppression of the human spirit and of human freedom. And if you think you're going to convert them, I would say you're being naively optimistic. And it's that old saying about, when they talked to what Lenin talked about, the capitalists will sell us the rope with which we shall hang them. That's what Lenin said. And we have been not just selling the rope, but giving the rope to the Chinese communists with which they are hanging us and our economies. We have transferred our industrial base to China. We have made our energy prices way more expensive than energy prices in China. We have absolutely handed them data network dominance on a plate, and now they want this Alternet. And why do they want it? Because they want the fastest network in the world, the lowest latency network in the world, the most secure network in the world. And you don't actually have to be Tom Clancy to imagine how that could be used to great effect by them.
You're just reminding me of an episode I did some time ago with John Lenchowski, one of the chief Soviet affairs advisor at the NSC for Ronald Reagan. And he, very compellingly to your point, explains how you don't need people to believe in communism for it to actually be operational in a society. And in fact, in some ways, it's better for them not to believe entirely because it's more compromising. I mean, this is my...
It's true, because if you're not a true believer, if you're not a true zealot, if you aren't really a Marxist and you know it's just a means to power, you're an even more compromised individual morally and spiritually.
Let's talk about a couple of these cases. You're involved in court in Europe, in the US, and frankly, even in China itself, which must be...
Well, that's a new development. Up until the last few weeks, all of the hundreds of legal actions took place in all Western jurisdictions. For the first time, they are now starting a case in China in a court in Shanghai. And I won't be traveling, but...
And they're accusing you of IP theft, which well, tell me what you think about that. Yeah.
That can be broadcast. It is Alice in Wonderland. It is through the looking glass. It is the inverse and direct opposite of the truth. It is breathtaking and galling and shocks the conscience that somebody would lie by saying that black is white and would take you to court for it. And it's the IP that has been stolen from us is very, very extensive. And this is the thing, it's not actually about that. It's about making us have to hire lawyers and defend against a case and spend money. Can I give you an example of something in the US which is really an interesting case? So they sued the company and me personally for defamation on a 0-win chance defamation lawsuit, like just complete nonsense. And I'm not exaggerating. Basically, they said I called them Chinese, and therefore it was defamatory. It's like, but you're Chinese. I mean, this is who you are. It's on the documents, and the defense that we had to mount. If you're suing somebody for defamation, or you're suing me for defamation, you would sue where you can get jurisdiction. And the best places to sue if you want to take a defamation case are London, the UK. Ireland is also a very good place, because the defamation, the hurdle for defamation is a lower hurdle. Now, the awards in the UK or Ireland are not as high as they are in America, because the defamation hurdle in America is much higher. But if you win a defamation case in America, the awards are much bigger than they would be in the UK or in a place like Ireland. However, they sued for defamation in America. Why? Because when you lose a case in America, generally the courts do not award costs automatically. If you were to sue, if you were to sue me, for example, in London, and you lost, it's highly likely that the court will award costs against you. So you would have to pay my legal fees. If you were to sue me here in Washington, D.C. for defamation, and you lost, you probably wouldn't have costs awarded against you. And then what you do is, when you would lose, you then appeal that decision. And then when you lose the appeal, you appeal that decision. And then when you lose that appeal, you keep appealing until the courts say you are no longer allowed to do that. And that's what happened in the US. But interestingly, in the US, there was one, in one of the appeals where there was a decision made, there was one technicality where they said, well, there's an issue of $4,000 of something, $4,000, which, maybe you have a point on this $4,000 issue, which is just a non-thing. And they are now suing for the $4,000. And the cost of that case, to take the case and to defend against it, will be multitudes of that number. So it's not about winning a case that says we have to pay you $4,000. It's about making us spend all the dollars to defend against a case where the only reason to do it is to bleed you out, to make you spend money.
This legal warfare or lawfare, it's described in the book Unrestricted Warfare. These two Chinese colonels wrote back in the day. But in 2003, there were 3 warfares which were codified into Chinese warfare doctrine. And as to your point, I mean, lawfare is one of those sort of key three elements.
There was a hearing on the Hill. I don't know the expert that gave the testimony. I've never met them and never spoke to them, but they selected our example and gave it as an example of Chinese lawfare in action.
Okay, so you've got a $3 billion carrot, you've got a $36 million stick, ongoing, could be a lot more than that. Why do you do it?
A number of reasons. Commercially, the value of the Alternet far exceeds any of these numbers, including their 3 billion number, far exceeds it. The Alternet, once it's up and turned on as the global, the world's first completely self-contained global communications network, as an entrepreneur, I have a view of what the value of that is, and it's a many multiples of any of the numbers that we've talked about here. I might be completely wrong about that, but that's my entrepreneurial sense of what the value is.
That's also my uneducated guess as well.
Right. It seems, you'd think it, right? You'd think it would, you know, if it does what it says on the tin, then it really is all these things, and of course it's going to be a very, very valuable company in global terms. So commercially, it's worth it. I mean, 36 million compared to the value of what that's going to be, it's, you know, relatively speaking, a drop in the bucket. But it's not a drop in the bucket when you have to raise that money from investors because you're pre-revenue on the major project itself. And so killing things like this in the cradle is the place to kill them. And killing them with by offering a big carrot is the best way to kill them. But of course, the donkey has to take the carrot, and this donkey is not taking the carrot, and it seems that that's not something they're accustomed to. And the reason the donkey isn't taking the carrot is because I know what the Alternet can do, and I do not want the Communist Party of China to have the Alternet. I would rather burn it down than have the Communist Party of China have the Alternet, because my children, my family, our democracies, our way of life could depend upon them not having the Alternet. And I think that the probability of this becoming important is at least, it's probably around a 50% probability that this could be a definingly important asset, and I don't want them to have it. I'm not a government, I'm just a guy. Frankly, governments haven't been that motivated by this, but I know how dumb governments are. I saw them implement policies and regulations that allowed Huawei and China to dominate the global wireless industry and literally deploy 5G networks in Western democracies, not just under the noses of governments, but with governments welcoming them and applauding them. That's how stupid we can be. So the fact that you have to wait for a long time for the penny to drop, that you can be in a bar fight with the Communist Party of China for so long without the cavalry showing up, it's no wonder so many people give in. Now, the system should be better than relying upon individual entrepreneurs and business people to not take the 30 pieces of silver.
Who's the cavalry here?
The cavalry should be the Western democracies, one or more of them, that should have stepped up years ago to make sure that this thing didn't get as far. Were it not for the fact that the team of people that I work with are so committed to this mission and making sure that the Communist Party of China cannot have this, this would already be theirs. This would be a fact in space today. It would already be there.
What would you like to see happen next as we finish up?
I'm executing. I am executing to the mission. We are putting the Alternet up. We will fight every lawsuit that the Chinese bring, as we have done. We will win them all, as we have been doing. We didn't get into the nitty-gritty of all these little actions. I mean, they'll never sue you one time for one thing. They'll sue you 3, 4, or 5 times for that thing, and they'll try different courts, and they'll try different judges in the same court. And they won't. They'll serve you on one. You'll beat that, the one on the service, but they won't serve you on another one, and they'll send it. In one case, we had a case was sent to some lawyer in a jurisdiction where the lawyer said that they were receiving for us. We never heard of that lawyer before. They didn't work for us. It was someone who was willing to risk their law license to say that they were in receipt of a suit. And because we didn't know that that action had even taken place, we had defended one, we had won it, and then we found out we had an injunction against us. It was a temporary injunction. We got it overturned in the end. But we said, well, hang on. No, we beat that. We beat that case. And they said, well, there is an injunction, and it's from this court. And then we checked, and it was a different judge. And we found out that this judge, unbeknownst to the judge didn't know, was told we had been served and had got confirmation from someone saying they had received service for us. So we beat the case in the injunction in this room of the court. We lost it in another room of the same court, not even knowing that this one had been taken. And we found out about it the day after they notified us about it, the day after the final day to challenge it on the simple way of challenging it. So we had to go through a much more lengthy process to be able to challenge and then overturn that injunction. And look, that is one place in the weeds. And then you have things like our people being followed around, where they're not hiding behind trees or wearing false moustaches. You can see you're being followed, and that's to get in your head. And that has stopped, but that went on for a while as well. And I could go on and on and on, but it's all about creating stick, creating pressure, and they know how inept Western governments are. They know how slow they are. They know how naive they are when it comes to communist China. I mean, look at this case in the UK, where these 2 guys that the Crown Prosecution Service wanted to prosecute for spying, cases being dropped. I mean, they know this. And so the number of instances where if they want to target something, that somebody is going to look around and look it over their shoulders and say, well, do I take the money and run, or do I stand and fight? And the cavalry aren't going to show up for quite a while. And actually, my message here is, and it's probably not a great message, but understand that if you are in the private sector and you are fighting the Communist Party of China on something, the cavalry ain't coming for a long time, if it comes at all. And you are on your own, and you are going to have to find it within yourself to have the spirit and the esprit de corps in your organization to mount that fight. But remember what we're doing it for. We're not doing it because the government tells us we shouldn't deal with the Communist Party of China. We should be doing it because it's what we're doing is the right thing to do. Whether our government acts or doesn't act, that's the thing that we have to remember. So, and look, you see people that go and companies that go and make massive investments in China and become captured by the Communist Party of China's economy and apparatus. There's no downside consequences for that. It is rewarded. So this is a long march. This is a long march, and we have to have the character and the spirit to make it. And if you are in the private sector and you are being targeted this way, expect that you're going to have to fight on your own, and it's a lonely place sometimes, but eventually it will be worth it.
The word courage comes to mind.
It does. And courage, I don't know if you've ever watched that. There was a British show made in the 80s called Yes Minister. And of course, people that are familiar with London, Washington will know it very well. You know it very well, yeah. And in Yes Minister, when Sir Humphrey, the senior civil servant, the Mandarin civil servant of Whitehall, would say to his minister, who then became Prime Minister, the Prime Minister would say, oh, I want to do this thing. I want to have this policy. I want to have this fight. And Sir Humphrey would say, that's very courageous, Minister. And the minister would immediately know, oh, he said, is it? He wouldn't want to do it because he knew that that symbolized recklessness. And courage is something that has been devalued in the West over the last 40 years. It is not prized. It's prized in military action. It is not prized in private sector action. It is not prized in commercial action. Nobody gets thanked for being courageous. So when you hear that a business leader is being courageous on a point of principle, people hear, this sounds expensive. That's a broken system, by the way, as you know. I think that there is long-term value in courage, and I think there's long-term commercial value in courage on not taking the money and running. I believe that. I also believe it's just the right thing to do, because I believe, I'm a Roman Catholic, and I think that ultimately I will be accountable to the final judge for what I do or do not do, and that certainly motivates how I think about things.
Well, Declan Ganley, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
It's been an honor to be on, Jan. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining Declan Ganley and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Jan Jekielek.